Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the February 16th, 2022 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair acknowledges the attendance and continued support of our entire staff. Jen, Alyssa, Mark, Amy, Kristen, and Liz. And we have we're missing a commissioner at the moment, so the appointed alternate will be Pat tonight. I'd like to remind you guys that for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time so we can refrain from speaking over each other. Also, that votes need to be done by roll call. So when I call your name, please state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. Also, Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 regarding COVID-19 allows for full public participation. Therefore, if you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I'll call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct, and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. First on the agenda, other business. John Waterbury, discussion on IA systems. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Mr. Waterbury up as we speak. And I'm also promoting Kristen Rathagen, who'll be running the slides for Mr. Waterbury. Hello, John.
Hi, Jennifer. So
I just promoted Kristen up. Kristen, are you there? Oh, there she is.
Mr. Waterbury, you're up, sir.
Great, thank you. I'm John Waterbury. I'm Vice Chairman of the Water Quality Committee, and I want to thank you for allowing us to come and just updating you on two things. The use of advanced IA systems for the treatment of our coastal pond nitrogen problem, and then briefly at the end of my discussion, an important decision that the town's going to have to make, which I'm sure you will all be interested in, is how we augment the discharge capacity of our main treatment plant. And so to begin the discussion, innovative alternative septic systems were introduced by DEP many years ago, basically to deal with Zone 2's drinking water issues, where people wanted to increase their use, and they could do that by adding these alternative septic systems. And they were permitted typically through DEP at 19 milligrams per liter or a 50% reduction in nitrogen. And the companies that develop those systems that are commercially on the market developed a whole set of systems which are available, many with general use that were permitted at 19 milligrams per liter. But they simply are not good enough to help us really solve our coastal nutrient pond problem. So there have been a number of advancements that have occurred, and there are now primarily 3 systems which we're trying to advocate for, all of which have the common feature of using cellulose in the form of wood chips as the carbon source for denitrification. And that allows them to get down below 10 milligrams per liter, and in some cases substantially less than that, and greater than 75% reduction in nitrogen. None of those have general use approval from DEP. So we're in the process of trying to get enough of those systems in the ground, and that requires 50 systems that have been put in the ground and monitored for at least 3 years before they're available to have general use approval from DEP. And at the moment, there are several of those systems that are particularly attractive. There's a system developed by John Smith on the vineyard called the Nitro system. He has 20 or so of those in the ground at the moment. Many of those are operating around 5 milligrams per liter. Peo Lombardo has a system called Nitrex, which also is particularly successful. There are not too many of those in the ground in our neighborhood yet. And George Hoyfelder at the test center out at the base has developed a fairly passive system he calls the layer cake, which has a layer of wood chips that he puts under the soil absorption system, which is also looking fairly favorable. So one of our primary goals is to get those systems as quickly as we can to general use. And there are a number of communities working to do that. The Coalition for Buzzards Bay is working on the west side of the bay on those. And there are a number of towns down Cape that are working to get those systems in the ground. So in our case, several years ago, we, in collaboration with the Coalition for Buzzards Bay, had a demonstration project around West Falmouth Harbor, where we installed between 20 and 30 innovative alternative systems, not many of the 3 that I've just mentioned. And we provided a grant, and we picked properties that were within 300 feet of the edge of West Falmouth Harbor. And that project has been fairly successful. A number of those systems are operating pretty well. But as an extension of that, we wanted to look at how we might use these newer IAs in the small coastal embayments in Buzzards Bay, where we never have any intention of sewering. And Kirsten, if you can, Kirsten could put up our slides. So there are 2 ways we've been thinking about using the IAs in that sort of situation. One is through individual homeowners, and again, working within that 300-foot boundary in places like Fiddler's Cove, West Falmouth, and Quissit. We actually think we can meet the TMDL by getting IAs in those homes within 300 feet of the edge of the coastal embayment. And with this approach, if you look at the number 2 there, one of the ways we were thinking of doing is gradually over time, rather than just mandating that everyone in that area do it at once. And so when there was new construction, we would mandate that they put in one of these new IAs that meets the very low standards. Or when there's substantial improvement to a piece of property, normally when they've upgraded by 50% of the value of the property, at the transfer of title when they sell the property, or at the failure of their Title V system. And then finally, we would have a time trigger so that if none of those upper 4 got IAs in the properties that we designated, that after 15 years, the people would be put on notice that they had to then put in an IA, and that we would probably go after this as a bylaw at some point at town meeting. Can I have the next slide, Kirsten? So these are just the descriptions of those definitions that cover those things. I don't think we need to dwell on that any further. Can you do the next one, Kirsten? So these are the areas which we thought this might work really well in. And this gives you an idea that red line is the 300-foot boundary around Fiddler's Cove. And we've gone in and picked the properties that we think would be candidates to help us get to the TM Dale for Fiddler's Cove. And you'll notice at the very northern end, the properties that probably are discharging right into Buzzards Bay, we don't include. And if we go to the next slide, this is West Falmouth Harbor. It's probably not big enough for you to see, but a number of those properties have red stars in them. They're the ones that have already participated in the project that we did with Coalition for Buzzards Bay. But here there are about 130 homes that we think if we were to add IAs to those gradually, we could get to the TMDL. And finally, if we look at Quissit, Quissit is the same thing. We go around the inner harbor. The outer harbor is probably well enough flushed that we don't need to deal with those homes, and there are probably 25 or 30 in Quissit. And using this sort of model, the homeowner would install the system. They would be responsible for the operation and maintenance of the systems with a contract the way we've done where the Board of Health is mandated IAs over the years. A second model, which we're thinking about, and it's becoming probably the better model, is to take this same series of properties and go through a process where we declared them a little watershed and dealt with them all at once. And the advantage of that is that we could then develop within town a responsible management entity. At the moment, the Board of Health manages all these IAs, and it becomes a real challenge to keep track of them all. The advantage of having a responsible management entity, and that might be the Board of Health or the Department of Public Works, is they would be responsible to report to DEP and would either be responsible for doing all the monitoring themselves and the maintenance, or they could subcontract that out. And one of the attractive things for us at the moment is the county through our county Department of Health and Environment is considering providing that service for the towns in the Cape. So that may be an attractive model for how we might want to deal with this in the future, rather than relying on the homeowner to keep the maintenance contract and doing the monitoring. So that's basically all I wanted to bring you up to date on that. This just shows you the number of houses included in each of those the parcels that we've identified. But I wanted to then just spend a few minutes, unless we wanted to do questions about this, updating you on how we're thinking about what we have to do as a town to augment our discharge at our main sewer plant. And the issue there is that as we begin to sewer from west to east through our coastal ponds, we've done Little Pond. We're now working on a plan in the year 2024 to bring to town meeting parts of Great Pond. We don't have sufficient discharge capacity at the plant to be able to do that. And so part of what we've been doing with our engineering consultants, GHD, is trying to identify where we might do that discharge. And we've been looking at upland discharge sites at the Augusta parcel near Wood Lumber Company, which was a 24-acre parcel the town purchased for municipal use, and the Allen parcel out toward North Falmouth, which has 15 acres set aside for municipal use for infiltration. And then we're also looking at the possibility of an ocean outfall. Years ago, we had an outfall in Woods Hole. That permit lapsed. And the Ocean Sanctuaries Act, which came into place in the 1970s, precluded the use of outfalls completely. And then we, in collaboration with the Coalition for Buzzards Bay, got the Ocean Sanctuaries Act modified several years ago so that with tertiary treatment, which is the treatment level we now have at our main plant, ocean outfalls are now again permitted. And at the moment, the Coalition for Buzzards Bay is looking at an outfall at the Maritime Academy for Wareham and Buzzards Bay. And we're pursuing the idea of an outfall in Falmouth, either in Buzzards Bay or in Nantucket Sound. And as part of what we're going to be bringing to town meeting this April is we've already contracted with Jim Churchill, a physical oceanographer at the Oceanographic, to look at the diffusion and currents and issues both in Buzzards Bay and in Vineyard Sound for possible sightings of an outfall. And we'll be coming to town meeting for additional funds in April to let us do some geological work, both inland and off the coast to, again, see about the feasibility of those possible discharge sites. And the variety of discharge sites have advantages and disadvantages. And they have, there's a wide spectrum of cost. One of the things we're trying to do now is bracket in a better way what the cost of an outfall might be. At the moment, that is not very well defined. We have a better idea of what it will cost to develop the Augusta parcel and the Allen parcel. And each of these discharge sites has pluses and minuses. And it's a decision which the town is going to have to make within the next year. And it really is going to have a big impact on how we're able to continue with our sequential sewering projects as we move from west to east down the coast, the southern coast. So I think that's where I'll stop and entertain questions. And we certainly, as a Water Quality Committee, look forward, we hope to getting support from the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board as we bring these issues to town meeting in the future.
Thank you, John. Jen?
Thank you, John. I don't have any questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I've got about 1,000, but I better pass.
Keep them brief.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking, no, you don't want to hear any war stories. The guys in PMD used to joke that they knew the outfall was out far enough when the English protested. Okay?
All righty.
Well, just
Maury.
thinking about outfalls, if one thinks about the Boston outfall, I mean, they've put that out into the middle of Cape Cod Bay. They've monitored the living bedevil out of it for 20 years. They've not been able to show that it has a substantial impact on Cape Cod Bay. New Bedford has a secondary treatment plant that discharges 30 million gallons a day right off the coast of New Bedford. And again, you don't see an impact on Buzzards Bay from that. Dartmouth is a town the size of ours, has a discharge of about 4 million gallons a day right off of their town. And again, you can't find it. And so I think that one can make a pretty good scientific argument, and I'm a microbiologist, that with diffusion being the currents and diffusion being what it is in Vineyard Sound, that putting our discharge at 3 milligrams per liter out there is not going to be an issue.
Maury?
Yeah, the treatment that they're going to, when it gets to that point, is so improved back from even 20 years ago. So the outfall is the most practical environmental way to do it. And just a correction, it was 100-foot range, I think, in West Falmouth for the first, the Buzzards Bay Coalition pilot program, not 300 feet. And I think they wanted to go 300, but they focused on 100. And one question I do have, you only named 2 sites for, possible upland, which was the Allen parcel and the Augusta. But didn't we purchase the Cape Cod Country Club for part of that to be for sewering as well?
We actually had that and thought about even a second major treatment plant over there. We've now sort of decided that we're going to locate all our treatment at the West Falmouth plant. And so it's just a question. And the West Falmouth plant is expandable. And what is limiting what we can treat there is, in fact, this discharge problem. And this has been the biggest issue that we've had to surmount ever since we started talking about expanding our sewering projects, is how we're going to, in the best way, manage the discharge from that plant.
Correct, because the Buzzards Bay Coalition, I think, still has a good hold on the town for
they actually, so that plant at the moment is capable of treating 1.2 million gallons per day. And our DEP discharge permit, I believe, is in the order of 450 or 500,000 gallons a day.
Right.
So DEP is limiting our treatment capacity there by discharge rather than by treatment.
Correct, because the discharge is what's contaminated the West Coast, which is the west side of town, which will never be sewered. So it's kind of a tough situation.
Right.
But the town keeps, I'm going to put this out in the public. The town keeps, letting people go by the flow control regulation, which we used to have in place so that you could sewer places like Little Pond, Great Pond. But then they're allowing people on Main Street with these bigger developments to bypass the flow control law and giving them a waiver. And by doing that, you just keep reducing the amount of capacity for treatment in the areas that need it the most, which is Little Pond and Great Pond and to the east side. So I hope that gets addressed, that they stop giving away the waivers for flow control when you don't have enough capacity now. But I think you're headed in the right direction, and I hope town meeting, a lot of towns are doing this. So I hope we can get on board with it. Thank you, John, for all your work.
All right. Steve?
Yeah, John, I just want to thank you for a surprisingly succinct presentation and the clarity of the presentation, considering 2 significant subjects. I hope that you have the support of our committee and move this forward. I am very interested in the cost and availability of the IC systems with the wood chips. Is that practical in the near term?
Yes, I mean, the cost of it depends a lot on what you're doing. If you have a functioning Title V system with a good septic tank and a good septic field, those systems can be augmented. For instance, with a nitro system, the apparatus is somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. What makes a lot of these systems very expensive is the amount of landscaping that has to be done after the installation. So if we look at the prices of the West Falmouth systems that were put in, they varied quite a bit. And by and large, that was due to a lot of the landscaping that had to be brought back up to specification. But in general, and one of the challenges about this is how we're going to fund it. And what that project in West Falmouth did is we had a SNEP grant where we could actually entice people to join that project by giving them a $10,000 grant. It remains to be seen how we can fund things as we go forward. Whether we can do it by betterment and getting in on the zero loan program from the state, or how we're going to do that. But that again is a major challenge.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Mr. Waterbury, thank you. Ms. Rathbun, thank you.
Thank you.
Steve?
Chairman, are we being asked to provide a support in some form tonight, or would that
Not
be
at
in
this
another
time,
point
no.
in time? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that's my understanding. Is that accurate, Jen?
I think so. I can double check with Kristen and circle back with you all on that.
Yeah. My understanding was this was informational, and I'm sure they'll come back to us for, and I'd like to think we would support anything they want to, throw out there. All right, next up, vote minutes, February 2nd, 2022. Anybody?
I don't think I was here.
Terrace, I move we accept the minutes as written, subject to any changes made this evening.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Is there any other input? All right, Betsy?
Blackfilter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
RSI.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes. Thank you. Next up is a request for a continuance under a notice of intent. Kevin Cusack, 380 Edgewater Drive East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a fiber roll system, restore a coastal bank, conduct invasive species management, and enhance the buffer to the coastal bank. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 9th.
Bird, so move.
Pat
Carlo
and
Hawks,
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until March 9th. Betsy?
Blackfilter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
RSI.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 9th. Next up, our requests for determination of applicability. First up, E&I's 286 Ashumet Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct vegetation management in 3 groundwater basins, which were created under Mass DEP number 25-4103. Ms. Bergeron?
Yes, thank you. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and by law. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved, Carlo Hawks.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Blackfilter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
RSI.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, Deborah H. McNiven, Lot 1, Ostrom Road, East Falmouth, Mass. for permission to construct a single-family dwelling with all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Ms. Bergeron?
Yes, the applicant has requested a continuance. Jen, do you recall what day?
They're requesting a continuance until March 2nd.
At the request of the applicant, will continue this to March 2nd. Harlow Hawks.
Gladfelter, second.
Whoa,
Oh,
I like it. We got competition tonight. Perfect. All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until March 2nd. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Terrace, aye.
Peter?
Walsh eye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 2nd. Next up, request for hearings under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. And as a reminder, commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage anybody to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. First up, Town of Falmouth, various waterways and beaches, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to re-permit the comprehensive permits for the Town of Falmouth's 31 dredging and beach nourishment projects. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I've promoted Leslie Fields up to promote the project. Mr. Chairman, before we begin on this one, can you make the announcements of the other continuances that we have? Because I do see some attendees that I know are in the audience for the other projects.
All right. We should find a way to put all these up front.
I understand that.
The next continuance that's going to come up is Michelle and Orly Bingham, which is 27 Crosby Lane. 380 we already announced. And then a hearing for a certificate of compliance, 21 Fay Road. So
And also, yep, and also Quaker Road, Solomini is going to be continued as well.
There you go.
Okay. Hi, Leslie. Is there anybody else I'm promoting up from your project team? I think you're on mute, Leslie. I can see you talking, but I can't hear you.
Now?
Yes.
Okay. Get the headphones. Do you see Greg in the audience?
I do not see Greg.
Okay, that's fine. It's just me then.
Okay.
So I'm Leslie Fields with the Woods Hole Group here tonight to represent the town on this application. And I have a PowerPoint slide deck of about 11 slides. I tried to keep it short. So if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and start that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. All right, are you seeing this?
Yes.
All right. So this is a notice of intent application on behalf of the town of Falmouth for comprehensive permitting for the town's dredging and beach nourishment sites. So it includes 31 different sites, combination of dredging and beach nourishment sites. We've got 20 dredge sites that have previously all been permitted and dredged in the past. So you've seen these before. Nothing new there in terms of the dredging sites. We've also got 10 beach nourishment sites that were previously permitted. And then we've included one additional site at Megansett Public Beach. So that's a new site for beach nourishment that we've included in this permit application. Just a little bit about the comprehensive permitting process. So we're wrapping all these projects into one permit application. And it's called the comprehensive permit. And it basically helps the town manage all these municipal projects that require ongoing maintenance. And it facilitates environmental review by the other state and federal regulatory agencies, because basically we take the same permit application and we file it with DEP for our water quality permit, our Chapter 91 permit, CZM, and Army Corps. And by lumping all these projects into one permitting umbrella, it really reduces the administrative burden to the town. We're not managing a bunch of different permit applications with different expiration dates and different conditions. It just makes it much simpler for them. It also provides flexibility for the town to optimize management of the coastline. And what I mean by that is that it allows the town to place material from one dredging site at any number of beach nourishment sites, provided the sediment is compatible. Now, in most cases, what the town does is, dredges a site and pumps it to the beach that's closest by. That's typically what we do. But we are asking for the flexibility to be able to take that sediment to other beaches where those beaches are compatible, have compatible sediment, and in the event that those beaches, are sediment starved and need a source of sediment. I will say that 3 of the sites have fines that are more than 10%, which means they're not compatible for beaches. So that's Trunk River Inner, Fresh River Inner, and Bourns Pond Inner. And so those 3 sites will be dredged and dewatered and then trucked to the town's composting facility at Blacksmith Shop Road. Here's just a couple of graphics of the sites. We've got a couple on Buzzards Bay over here. And then here's the sites. Here's the sites along the western side of Vineyard Sound, from Trunk River all the way over to Great Pond. And then as you move further to the east, again, Great Pond all the way over to Wacoit Bay. As I said before, the Falmouth Conservation Commission has seen these projects before. The last time the commission issued a comprehensive permit for this suite of projects was back in 2012. Since that time, there have been a number of amendments and additions to the project. Each time it was approved by the Conservation Commission. This time we are seeking a new order of conditions, though, because the previous one is getting ready to expire. And we're asking for that to be issued for a 5-year time period, with the possibility of requesting another 5-year extension. So for a total of 10 years. And if we get the 10 years, that aligns with the duration of the other state and federal permits that we'll be getting for the project. I'm going to talk about 4 areas that have really changed since the commission saw this project last. I was smartly advised to focus on these 4 areas that have changed. And then I've got slides for all the sites. If you all want to ask questions when I'm done about any of the sites, we can certainly pull those up and I can answer any questions. So we added Megansett Beach as a nourishment site. That is sort of looking ahead to when the town will be seeking a permit to dredge the entrance channel at Megansett Harbor and potentially for some of the dredging within the harbor. We also added the Great Pond Inner Channel, so it's quite a long length of channel. You've permitted in the past back in 1999. It wasn't included in the comprehensive permit suite last time, but we are incorporating it this time because the harbor master feels that work needs to be done in the near future. We revised the Bourns Pond dredging footprint to align with the town's project there that widens that inlet. So you've approved a new dredging project there. And so we are basically permitting that same footprint that you've permitted previously. We've included it in this comprehensive permit. And then at Eel River, we shifted the dredge footprint as far as we could feasibly to the west to minimize impacts to Washburn Island. So that spit at Washburn Island, it's growing from Washburn Island towards the west. We've tried to shift the Eel River dredge footprint as far to the west as we can to minimize impacts to Washburn Island. All right, so here's just some graphics for each one. This is the footprint at Megansett Beach that we're adding right here. It's basically just the public beach there at Megansett. The sediment there at that particular beach we've sampled, it's all, primarily 95% sand. We would be impacting only the coastal beach resource there, not the dunes. And there are not any sort of endangered species or winter flounder or horseshoe crabs that would require us to have a time of year restriction on using or placing material on that beach. So for this beach, we wouldn't expect there to be the need for a time of year restriction. Great Pond, this is the one that I told you. So previously in the comprehensive permit, you've seen this Great Pond outer channel. That's been in the comprehensive permit for a number of years. Now we're adding this inner channel here. Again, it's something that's already had a permit and it has been dredged before. We're just adding it to the comprehensive permit. And over here, this table just shows the dredge volumes that are proposed. So for this inner channel, we've estimated about 4,000 cubic yards, about every 5 to 8 years. The material in both of these channel sections is over 90% or 89% sand and gravel. It's very few fines. So all of it's compatible for or good for beneficial reuse. And it is proposed to go to this in-seasons resort beach right here, immediately to the west of the Great Pond entrance channel. Both of these dredge areas have a number of things that we need to consider when we look at time of year restrictions. So both of them have winter flounder. They were both considered a fish run. They're both within horseshoe crab habitat. The inner channel is within mapped habitat for priority and estimated priority habitat for rare shorebirds, and both are considered shellfish habitat. So with all those constraints, then we've got 2 different time of year restrictions. So for the outer channel, we would not be able to dredge between January 15th and June 30th, and for the inner channel between January 15th and August 31st. And then here's just the details about the in-seasons resort beach. That would have a time of year restriction from May 1st to 7/31. So for example, if we were going to be dredging from the outer channel, we have to go with the most stringent time of year restriction. So basically, we were going to dredge here, the outer channel, and pump it to the in-season resort beach. We would not be able to work between January 15th and July 31st. So we're going with the most stringent sort of time of year restriction. Here's the Bourns Pond and Monopoly project. Here again, these green areas shown for dredging are ones that you guys recently permitted, I'm going to say within the last year, in association with the widening of the Bourns Pond inlet. And so the dredge volumes are listed here. All the material in the approach channel and in the inlet is sandy and gravelly. But the material inside Bourns Pond, we found to have more than 20% fine, so it's quite silty. So that material there is going to have to be dredged and taken to the composting site up at Blacksmith Shop Road. The rest of the material could be pumped to either side on Minot Beach. Time of year restrictions are listed down here. We've got winter flounder, horseshoe crab, estimated priority habitat for rare shorebirds, and on the inside, shellfish. One thing I will say about the Minot Beach footprint that we're requesting in this comprehensive permit, this is the same footprint that we permitted last time with the comprehensive permit. I do know that the commission has seen a different footprint in association with the project to again widen Bourns Pond Inlet and to rebuild the jetty and potentially place some groins. That permit, that project has not been completely through the state and federal permit agencies. And so rather than trying to add something to this permit that hasn't completely been approved by everyone, at this point, we just included the original footprint that was included in our application last time, back in 2012. All right, and then Eel River. So this is the spit that's coming off of Washburn Island. It's growing towards the west, so towards the Minot Yacht Club over here. We've taken this channel and we've shifted it as far as we can to the west to avoid impacts to the end of this spit. We can't go any further west without endangering the yacht club over here and without sort of making a very sort of sharp bend in the channel in an area that's really sort of hazardous already from a navigation standpoint. You can see the dredge volumes here. So on the approach channel, that starts out here at the entrance and goes to this little black line right here, right near the yacht club. That's about 3,500 cubic yards per year. And further in, it's about 3,700 cubic yards per year. It's all sandy and gravelly, so it's good for beneficial reuse on beaches. It is proposed to go to either Washburn Island or Minot Beach. And with all the constraints with the endangered species and whatnot, we've got these time of year restrictions here. I wanted to just point out too that impacts to the end of the spit. So this is considered habitat for endangered and threatened shorebirds. We will be impacting about 0.12 acres of that habitat. So 0.12 acres above mean low water. We have received a letter from Natural Heritage. They acknowledge that. We've had discussions with them on the phone as well. And they did make a finding in that letter that if the project were conditioned with time of year restrictions, shown here, that it would avoid adverse impacts and it would also avoid a prohibited take from caused by impacts of dredging in this area. So, we were pleased to get that from Natural Heritage. One thing Jim brought up today, rightfully so, is that, this is state-owned land right here. So I did call Webner today, had to leave a message for them just to talk to them about, getting permission to do this project. I think ultimately will be directed up to the state to get permission, but we started the ball rolling, trying to get permission for that. And then 2 more slides here, wetland resources impacted. If the town were to do all these projects in 1 year, we'd be dredging 38,460 cubic yards in that year and impacting a total of 821,805 square feet of resource area. The resource areas involved are listed here: the barrier beach, coastal dune, and some of the estimated and priority habitat sites are all associated with the beach nourishment. And then the dredging projects, they also impact some of the estimated and priority habitat, but also all these other resource areas listed here. So salt ponds, land containing shellfish, fish runs, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and land under the ocean. As far as proposed mitigation measures, we do have a fairly extensive table in the notice of intent, table 12, that describes all the time of year restrictions for each dredging and beach nourishment project. And those are based on the presence of winter flounder, fish runs, horseshoe crabs, and threatened and endangered shorebirds. We also have setbacks from eelgrass where it occurs for both dredging and nourishment. We are proposing to do pre-dredge shellfish harvesting in conjunction with the shellfish constable in areas that he deems as significant land containing shellfish. We're proposing slopes of no steeper than 10-to-1 in all areas that are considered natural heritage habitat. And we've done extensive sediment testing to ensure compatibility of the dredge sediment with the receiving beaches. But that's also something that would be ongoing over the lifetime of the project. If additional sediment testing could be required to quantify any of these beach areas if they change in sediment characteristics over time, because some of them are quite variable. So we would be doing sediment testing, before the dredging and the beach nourishment if it was deemed, if we found that the beaches were significantly different than what the testing showed, that leading up to the dredge permit application. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's all I have, but I'd be more than welcome or more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Leslie. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've already talked to Leslie about some of my concerns. One of the biggest ones was, the impacts to the tip of Washburn Island. So we'll need to incorporate natural heritage's comments. Alyssa can actually tell you about the nesting habitat over there. She did work for Mass Audubon and was monitoring those areas for a while. One of the biggest concerns I have with the newer sites, I mean, the board has seen most of these projects in one form or another, whether they've been in the old comp dredging permit or standalone permit. And as Leslie says, this is just a way to get everything together so it's easier for the town to manage and administer. But one of my biggest concerns was the new site at Megansett Beach. And Leslie, can you kind of talk about what material would be placed there? It's my understanding that this site is being looked at not only for the outer Megansett, but also for a dredging project that might be taking place in the town of Bourne, which does not have compatible sediment in that area to be here. So my concern is either using Megansett Beach as a dewatering site for incompatible sediment or dredge material, or I think, Leslie, you said another way to dewater is to excavate a big pit, dewater the dredge spoils there, and then remove that. And I just feel that it is really, it's a real big impact to Megansett Beach to do that, as well as placing those incompatible dredge materials on that beach. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that, Leslie, and about the potential project taking place in Bourne that we're looking at Megansett Beach to use.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So there's really two efforts ongoing right now centered around dredging up in that area. One is a Town of Falmouth project.
Yeah.
It's not included in this application, but the town is looking at, has contracted with us to permit the dredging at the entrance channel to Megansett Harbor. A fairly small channel. It's all sandy in there. That material would be slated for dredging to Megansett Beach and used as beach nourishment there. There's another effort ongoing that we're involved with as well for the neighborhood, the Megansett Squatigue Association. And so that project involves dredging Megansett Harbor, the current river that leads to Squatigue Harbor, and then also Squatigue Harbor. We did just finish a bunch of sampling up in that area last week. I do know that the material in Squatigue is really pretty fine. It's not going to be compatible for beach nourishment. And Squatigue is completely within the town of Bourne. The line sort of runs right through the middle of, sort of splits the current river in two. So we are going to be tasked with looking, at ways to dredge and remove and dewater that material and where we're going to put it. I do think that we could build a dewatering basin at Megansett Beach and pump it into there, and then remove it and then regrade the beach with the native materials and restore the beach. But I can't say for sure that that's something that's going to be proposed or that, we would be allowed to do that, seeing how it's coming from Bourne and going into Falmouth. So that's all sort of to be determined at this point. But I certainly hear your concerns, Jen, and understand them.
Mm-hmm. And another question I have, Leslie, when you were making the presentation, where are they dewatering the Bourns Pond inner dredge sediment?
Yeah, so that's going to be dewatered in the parking lot across the road, just the public beach parking lot. It's not, surface,
Okay.
and then we'll truck it off.
Okay. I think that's all for now, Mr. Chairman. Again, we do need to wait for comments from Webner so they are aware that there's that point, what is it, 0.1 acres, Leslie, is going to be impacted. The tip of that island. So that the tip of that island is basically like just taking it off. So I'd like to hear what Webner's comments are, if they have any, just so they're aware that the project is going forward in this manner. And then also, I would really want the board to think about having that really fine material out of Squetique Harbor placed on Megansett. I just have some concerns with that, not only just impacting Megansett Beach by digging that huge, digging a pit, but also, you know, how it's going to impact the beach for the residents as well. So that's all I have, unless Alyssa has anything to add about the plover activity that she knows of over on Washburn Island.
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's been a few years since I monitored out there, but typically the historic nesting at the site did not take place at the tip area. There was interest because it's great habitat, but it's very narrow and there's a lot of activity, a lot of fishermen, a lot of boaters, a lot of kayakers. Typically any interest that was over there with the birds was very minimal. Could be great for staging, but Washburn's a big island. So those are all the comments I have for you now.
Mr. Chairman, can I add one other thing that I think the commission should know about?
Sure.
I do know that there's the town received a coastal zone management resiliency grant that they're working on now with John Ramsey's firm. Used to be Applied Coastal. I don't know what their name is now, but so they're still working on that project, and it's a project at this spit right here at the Eel River. And so they're trying to figure out, you know, the best way to manage this. And, you know, I suspect that when they're done with that work, and it's probably slated to be done at the end of June, like all the other CZM grants, there'll be some recommendations for some changes at that spit. And then they'll proceed with permitting. You guys are going to probably see this, you know, as a permit in the future. But it is a really, you know, when I talked to the harbor master, it's a really dangerous area for navigation. It's very narrow, constrained by the yacht club over there. The currents are extremely swift, so much so that, you know, the smaller boats with the smaller engines, they can't maneuver in there very well. It's just really dangerous. So I think that's one of the reasons why Applied Coastal or John's working on it, and I'm sure he'll come up with a solution that you know will help that area out.
Leslie, I believe the new company is Sustainable Coastal Solutions.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments, Betsy.
I have a couple of comments and then a couple of questions. First of all, thanks to Jen and Greg and Leslie for working on these permits from, you know, for the last 10 years. But I think it's really helpful for the town to combine a lot of this. So I have one question, and that is, suppose we get hit by a big hurricane and some of these beach areas, you know, are kind of radically altered. Like, let's say at Bourns Pond, we have a new inlet that's pushed through or something like that. How does, I think I get cut off. So how does that work with this permit? Could there be amendments to it?
There could definitely be amendments to it, yes. So if something like that happens, Betsy, we'd have to get out there and survey it and sort of come up with a plan for, you know, what we're going to do. And if we're going to use dredge material to help restore it or, you know, manage it, we definitely have to amend the permit. Okay, good. So just looking at all your time of year restrictions, it looks like all this work's going to be done in the fall. That's pretty much what, yeah. That's pretty much it, except for the approach channels. They're allowed to dredge later, you know, in the spring sometime because they're less than 10,000 cubic yards. That's sort of a DMF threshold, and they do allow that dredging in the approach channels, even if they have winter flounder, if they're less than 10,000 cubic yards.
Okay, and my other question is sort of monitoring for these. Is there a beach profile and a dredge profile monitoring in place? And who does that? Will you be doing it, Leslie?
To my knowledge, the town does not monitor the beaches. They don't profile the beaches. They're more beaches that are, beneficial reuse of dredge material. So it's not a engineered design that they need to monitor to make sure that it's, maintaining its width or height or berm elevation, something like that. I do know that they monitor them for birds. That is something that the town does, or at least contracts with Mass Audubon to do. But there's not really any beach profiling that goes on.
Yeah, I'm more concerned with the beach profiling, because then you might get a sense of, seasonal changes in that area. I mean, you know what you can learn from that.
Yeah.
I can actually jump in. The town, I'm sorry, Les and Betsy, the town is actually starting to look at profiling all the public beaches. We are working with a company called Drone Deploy that did an initial baseline drone survey of all the beaches. So it is a program that the town is going to start doing on an annual basis, is flying these flying the drone over the beaches, and the information that is provided is pretty amazing. Yeah. And I can share that with you, Leslie. I mean, it was pretty cool when we got the initial surveys back, and they were showing us how to utilize them and how to work through the program. And it was pretty interesting. So hopefully the town will be continuing to do that, and they'll be working with Drone Deploy to do these flyovers at least on an annual basis.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And I know that that was I'm glad to hear the town's doing it. And it was something that was recommended in the beach management plan. And I think, maybe that's where the idea came from, but I'm glad to hear the town's proceeding with that.
Yeah.
And then Betsy, as far as the dredge sites, Greg monitors that just, from being out there, and he knows where it's shoaling, and he hears from, other, people in the boating community where things are shoaling, and he's used to, he knows where it happens because he's, been put at this so long. But they do, when the county dredge comes in, they do pre-dredge surveys. So, he has an idea of the condition of the channels, right along.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And it was a nice, succinct presentation also. Thanks, Leslie. That's all, Jamie. Thanks.
Thank you. Courtney? Mr. Byrd? All right. Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Maury?
I just have a couple. It was kind of fascinating because we have a project that have a notice of intent that they were wondering where their sand went. And on page 40, B40, you can kind of, with that aerial, see it, which might help them out as well. There's a lot of time of year restrictions, and one of the things I am a little concerned about is when you say that the DMF will let you sort of, with 10,000 cubic yards or less, you can sort of not have to go by the time of year restriction. And that kind of concerns me, because I still think that, whether it's 10,000 cubic yards or 10,001 cubic yards, there's going to be a lot of disturbance during that time of year. So I think we should maybe, that one is the one that gave me a little bit of heartburn, especially since the time of year restrictions near the Washburn Island and up that way and up through Eel River. We had lots of, issues with that at prior hearings, that the shellfishermen, you're going to relay shellfish, and so we know you're having an impact because you just took their home away. And where you're going to put them, I don't know. Did you in this? I didn't see where you're going to put them.
But the shellfish, that's something we have to work out with the shellfish constable.
Yeah. I'm really, that's a really incredible shellfish habitat and, resource for a lot of reasons. So that one I was worried about. And how many private beaches are getting sand? 3 or 4, I think. I think 4. So how does that impact? It doesn't make any difference, right, for the public not having to use it?
They had to sign easements. Maury.
I know that they're going to want the sand, but I'm saying, maybe I'm mistaken, but in some cases they say if public sand is used on a private beach, then it becomes a private beach or a public beach. I don't know. I just want to make sure they're aware of that.
Well, they had to sign easements, but because they are accepting sand from a publicly funded dredging project, they have to sign easements allowing the public to pass between mean high and mean low.
Okay.
And they've done that.
Okay. I saw a whole bunch. I didn't read every document, but, and then I think the last one, you said there are some locations of eelgrass. Where are they, Leslie?
They're shown the plans, but it's mainly around Bourns Pond. So
Bourns
inside
Pond.
Bourns Pond and then on the seaward side of the approach channel.
Okay, and then the very last thing is the inner channel of Bourns Pond. You stated that there were, the dredgings there is silty sand.
Yeah.
And it kind of brought me to a little question because that was when we renourished Minot, and I'm glad Betsy brought that up to know what these profiles are. And we asked people, where's the sand going? And again, you look at the aerial and it's pretty clear where the dredgings and the beach nourishment went from Washburns, from Minot, went into Bourns Pond. And Bourns Pond is filled up because of it. And it's interesting that it's non-compatible sand there, which probably was from that dredging project that had 200 and something cubic yards of sand on Minot that disappeared in 2 months.
Yeah, that sand that was placed there before was sandy material. It wasn't this really fine silty material that we're finding in Bourns Pond right now.
Yeah, you wonder where it came from. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that was interesting. And I know that we were supposed to monitor that beach nourishment, and I'm glad to hear from Jen that this drone thing is going to be a wonderful resource for us to be able to do it a lot more effectively, efficiently, and financially to do that. So thank you. And I'm glad we're putting these all together over 10 years because it's a lot of work. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to one of Maury's initial questions? There's only 2 areas that are approach channels, Bourns Pond and Eel River. Those are the only 2 that are allowed to, where the work's allowed according to DMF within that time of year restriction for winter flounder because they are less than 10,000 cubic yards. There's only 2 spots. So it's Bourns Pond approach.
2 very significant spots.
And Eel, and if you would talk to Greg, I think he would argue pretty strongly that he needs that flexibility to be able to do the work with the Barnstable County dredge during those time periods because that equipment is so busy elsewhere on the Cape. He needs to be able to bring that equipment to the site. He needs a wider time period in which he can bring the equipment to the site. And so I think he would argue that he really wants to be able to not have to adhere to the time of year restriction for winter flounder in those 2 locations.
Right, and everybody that uses the county dredge has time of year restrictions, so it does make it really difficult.
Yeah, it does.
It's a very big demand. Thank you.
All right. Pat?
No comments, thank you.
All right. Peter?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The first one, with the in-seasons resort beach and the Great Pond channel dredging, nearby at Great Bay Street, there is washing out of Great Bay Street, and a lot of people have been talking about it, and it has been closed down because it's so washed out. And I was wondering what the decision-making process was to go to the in-seasons resort beach instead of shoring up Great Bay Street.
That's a good question. We didn't look at Great Bay Street. That's inside the pond, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. We didn't look at that. The reason we went to in seasons is that's where we went last time. That is an area that when we get, storms from a certain approach, we'll get sort of material washing across the beat of the road. So it's an area that we want to try to maintain as a beach to protect the road from future damage. I think that's the main reason why we're going there. But I mean, we could look at this other location inside the pond, and if it's something that seems feasible and would make sense from a resiliency standpoint, I don't see why we couldn't, amend the permit in the future to add that if it made sense to.
Well, I would appreciate it if you at least considered it.
Yeah.
And along that line, if some dredging or beach nourishment were added or deleted in the next 10 years, how big of a problem is it to add it to the big book here?
So you mean if you want to amend the existing comprehensive permit to add another site or to make a change to one of the projects that's in the permit application? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly.
I mean, it's not too much trouble. We just have to, develop do the surveys and develop the plans and identify the resource areas. And it's not impossible. It's not difficult. It just takes some time.
And final comment, instead of questions, I agree with Greg that he needs flexibility with the time of year permits to get by the White Yacht Club. No further comments.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only comment is that what a project. Congratulations on getting it down in paper and presented. It's really amazing what has to undergo to keep this. Both the presentations tonight I thought were extraordinary. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, it appears that Mr. Bird's computer is frozen, so he can't comment. And so, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
There is, Mr. Chairman. Hang on, let me get over to attendees. Brenda Pollock has her hand raised, so I'll be promoting her to a panelist so she can address the board. Ms. Pollock, you're our, I promoted you to a panelist, so you can unmute yourselves and turn on your camera if you'd like and address the board.
Hi there, my name is Brendan Pollock.
Mr. Pollock, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I think I used my wife's email. I live at 228 County Road, and I also represent Henry Pollock, who's on the call, who's on 230 County Road. We're direct abutters of the public beach. In short, would like to object not to the dredging of Megansett Harbor, but the plan as stated for the sediment on page B4 of the notice of intent for the summary projects. Generally, we dispute the assertion that dredge sediments from Megansett Harbor will be beneficial as beach nourishment or otherwise. Henry Pollock is old enough to remember the last time the spoil from harbor dredging was dumped on Megansett Beach in the 1950s, and reports that it covered the beach area with shellfish, seaweed, and stones. Smelled badly and took several years for both the smells and larger stones to disappear. A similar proposal is not a good plan for a currently popular summertime public recreational area. The anticipated beneficial outcome is not stated in the proposed plan. The Megansett Public Beach area has not been eroding, but is actually steadily accreting year after year and has been for decades due to the two stone jetties that extend from it, which collect sand from the prevailing southwest weather pattern in summertime. As a result, the elevation of the beach itself, excepting the immediate shoreline, has already risen to the level of both the public beach parking lot and the stone riprap that separates the beach from the harbor. Therefore, any dredge sediment placed in the 60 by 130 foot area proposed in the plan will be of higher elevation and will surely blow back into the harbor from a southwest and northeast direction, as there is no barrier to prevent it from doing so, as this already happens at Megansett Public Beach on windy southwest days. This being the case, the only possible place that the dredge sediment can be spread is seaward, which is west, which makes the rocks and refuse problem worse, as this shallow sandbar area in the most popular spot is the most popular spot for recreation in Megansett Public Beach. And again, there is no erosion problem to rectify at Megansett Public Beach. The beach is accreting, not eroding. More specifically, we feel that the front end loader and bulldozer operators working on this project will be faced with the situation just described and realize the reality of the situation and instead spread the problematic refuse sediment southward in front of our houses, which is not town property. And there's a picture on page B4 of the plan that provides a photo of this exact area, which we find a little alarming. So we urge the commission not to allow any sediment beyond the footprint of the proposed area in the plan, and once dewatered, require that the sediment and refuse be trucked to other locations where it might actually be put to beneficial use. Also in the plan, it states that this is only accounted for a sediment from town of Bourns lands, not Falmouth. So I'm not sure why we would be obligated to deal with it. So in short, we're not opposed to the dredging. We just don't think that the quality of the sediment in the harbor, of which we're intimately familiar, along with the quality of the sand in Public Beach, we don't think that Megansett Public Beach is a suitable place to keep it permanently, and it can't stay there anyway because of the elevation. It'll just blow back into the harbor, or it'll be smeared either onto our beach area or be too rocky and shelly and otherwise befoul the area that is used for recreation for several years to come. Thank you. And I'll post the comment in the chat to be part of the record, or however you do that.
You're on the record as this is being recorded, so thank you.
All right.
You are on the record, sir.
And is there any other public comments, questions?
It doesn't appear so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So do I understand we need to wait to hear from Wacoit Bay, correct?
Yes, I'd like to just make sure that Wacoit Bay understands what the impacts to Washburn are going to be. Leslie, how long do you think you might need to get in touch with the director over at Webner? You're muted, Liz, sorry.
I'd like to think that I could, reach her this week. I don't know that we're going to have a resolution that quickly, but maybe we could continue for a couple of weeks, and then, if we have to push it further, then we can. I don't know what your agenda looks like, so.
Let me see. Well, if I gave you the 9th, you would be the last one on the 9th because I have quite a few continuances to the 9th. Or we could put you on March 16th. Which one do you think would be better?
I guess I'd rather go to the 9th.
Okay.
Drink some coffee and go to the 9th.
Okay.
On the 9th, I'll drink coffee. All right, so I'll request a continuance on behalf of the town to March 9th.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you,
Before
Liz.
anybody acts, Courtney, did you hear enough for that?
Yeah, I heard it.
Do you have any comment or question?
No.
Okay.
So at the request, request of the applicant, I'll make a motion to continue this to March 9th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm emotional there. I mean, it's
And
just a
second.
continuance. Don't get, you know.
I'm not emotional. I got something down my throat.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
And naughty
Proud.
dogs.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until March 9th. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Terrace, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 9th. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Leslie.
Good night.
Next up, Woods Hole Business Association, Woods Hole Road, Woods Hole, Mass. For permission to remove all marked dead or dying trees landward of the Shining Sea Bikeway and to remove invasive vines. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Give me 1 second. I'm going to move Mr. Pollock back into the attendees, and I've promoted Nate Goshgarian from Holmes and McGrath to present this project. Nate, is there anybody else on your project team I'm promoting up tonight?
No, just me.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Members of the commission, thank you. Members of the commission, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Nate Goshgarian presenting on behalf of the client. Permission to share my screen, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, can we see the aerial?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So the property we're talking about tonight is a 1,000 linear foot strip of land owned by the Commonwealth located on Little Harbor. It's located right along here, directly landward of the Shining Sea Bikeway and seaward of Woods Hole Road in this area. Resources on or within 100 feet of this property include land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, a coastal bank, a coastal dune, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. So I'm going to switch over to the exhibit. So I'll start off by saying that this project is pretty straightforward. There are only two components. The first component that we're proposing is the removal of 22 dead or dying trees located along the coastal bank here and marked as such. Really, since the inception of this project, we've tried to keep this as minimalist and black and white in scope. Since we're talking about removal of vegetation, our goal is essentially threefold. We are trying to remove as little vegetation as possible, to make as small as a footprint as possible, and to kind of as a byproduct, have a rather significant beautification of the area, that coastal bank, enhancing the view over Little Harbor. So Matt Inman, who is the contractor who is actually going to be doing the work, and myself, put a lot of time going back and forth into making sure that our selections of the trees that are dead or dying were in fact definitive. I would say the ratio of dead to dying trees is about 9:1. So that is the first of two components of this project. The second component is removal of invasive vines. I know for anybody who's headed towards Wood Hole and looked on your left as you pass this area, it essentially looks like a sea of bittersweet. So the second component is moving invasive vines that are clearly having a significant detrimental effect on trees. So trees that are clearly being kind of cut off or just about dead as a consequence, we're proposing to remove those vines and to help the kind of longevity of the coastal bank over time. I also worked with Matt on the methodology to make sure that our footprint, in fact, is as minimal as possible. So there's going to be no heavy machinery down there. This is all going to be essentially hand cut with ladders, and on a daily basis, the vegetation that's being removed will in fact be removed from the location in full. So that's really all I have in terms of scope of the project. I think I'll end my presentation there, and Mr. Chairman, hand it back over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Jen?
Yes, Nate, just to clarify, so the staff has conducted multiple site visits to the site. I visited the site I think twice, Nate, with you and the prior agent, Kevin, and I know Alyssa has visited the site in preparation of this hearing. So just to be clear, Nate, the invasive removal is just going to be the vines. You're not going to be removing any of the invasive shrubs on the slope or disrupting those root systems. It's just cut the vines and remove them from the trees, correct?
Yep, that's a great point. No understory is being touched. All the roots associated with any trees we're touching are also remaining intact.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that clarification for the board. Yep. We did spend a lot of time out here, Mr. Chairman, and, working with the Matt Inman, Holmes McGrath, and some of the community members down there to kind of, understand what the goal was. And we thought this was a good phase one of dealing with the invasives on that slope. Let's remove the dead trees, remove the vines, and see how that opens up that vista. So I thought it was a good phase one approach to it. Unless Alyssa has anything to add.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. Courtney.
Are you using any kind of herbicide on the bittersweet?
No, we are not.
And so what are you going to do to keep it from coming back? I mean, you're gonna...
Yeah, so long-term wise, we don't have kind of anything that touches upon that. We're just, trees that are an immediate threat of being killed over the next couple of years. We're just proposing to remove the vines off those trees, in which it's like excessive.
So you're really going to need to do an ongoing maintenance thing then.
I think that's something we'll have to talk about in the future.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a great idea, but that stuff was really stubborn, and that's,
Yeah.
I'm just, if you don't have a long-term maintenance plan, it's kind of fruitless. It's like,
Yep. I understand your point. I think the majority of this really does focus on the trees that are dead or dying, and kind of the minor component of this project is that second component, which is the vine removal.
Okay. No further questions.
All right. Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Maury.
No questions. Thank you.
Pat.
No questions. Thank you.
Peter.
Yes, I have a question for Nate. Do you think the fines are solely responsible for all the dead and dying trees?
That's a great question. I don't think that's in fact the main culprit. I think, a lot of this has to do with age and kind of overcrowding, but it's certainly a component of it. The percent I couldn't necessarily assign, but it's definitely, I think, a significant component of it.
Thank you.
But yeah.
Steve.
No questions. Thank you.
Betsy.
Yeah, I just have two comments. One is I thank whoever it is, whatever, well, I guess it's the Woods Hole Business Association, for putting the effort to take, as Nate said, this initial step, and then a decision can be made over time. I mean, obviously it's going to take some kind of monetary resources to do further work in this area, but this is a step. And so you're removing the dead trees, leaving the roots in place, taking the vines out, opening up that vista. And yeah, it's something that really has had to have been done, should have been done for the last couple of decades. So kudos for somebody starting the ball off. That's all, Jamie.
Excellent. Jen, public comments, chat.
Jamie, did you ask me something?
No, I skipped you.
No, I had no comments. I was just.
No.
No comments.
No public chat comments, Mr. Chairman.
How about Pat comments? All right.
None from Pat either.
I make a
Audio's not great.
I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Glenn, second.
All righty then. So there's no public chat comments. There's no further comments from Pat. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Betsy.
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Hello, Hawks Eye.
Pat.
Terrace, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
At aye.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Night, Nate.
Did Nate just leave?
He did. He took himself out.
Thought he had another project tonight.
Well, maybe he'll try to get back in.
Okay.
Next up, Robert and Elaine Bailey, trustees. The Elaine M. Bailey 2013 Revocable Trust, 132 Little Neck Bars Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct invasive species removal and management. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm attempting to promote Jen Crawford up to present a project. Jen? Failed to change role. All right, I just got an error message from Zoom, so let me try this again. Oh, here she comes. I hope I didn't lose her in cyberspace.
There she is.
There we
Hi,
go.
Jen.
I thought I pushed the wrong button at first. I was like, no.
I got an error message. I'm like, what did I do?
All right. Good evening. Have you guys announced it yet? I don't know. It flashed out.
You're up.
No, we announced it.
You're on.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, it cut out. I wasn't sure. All right, for the record, Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management here on behalf of the applicant tonight. So you all are very familiar with this property out on Little Neck Bars Road. When we originally filed the project with all the invasive species management, we needed to pull the large bulk of the Phragmites management out of the first proposal because we ended up crossing over that threshold of 5,000 square feet, which triggers the Ecological Restoration Limited projects. So that is the piece that we are back here in front of you tonight for. We went through all of the steps in that process with, advertising the environmental monitor, et cetera, et cetera. So the project is basically to gain permission to manage the bulk of the Phragmites on the project. It's pretty cut and dry. There's really nothing else to it. Staff did have a question about the percentage of the area on the plan that is covered by Phragmites versus not, so to speak. And it's actually, I have a picture of the area, which is probably easiest to just show you what it looks like. So is it possible for me to share? Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so that's just standing in on the edge of the Phragmites area, basically just looking back up towards the house. You can see the house barely in the background, but that whole center area has Phragmites growing throughout it, but you can see that there's a large amount of high tide bush, and then as you get closer to the house, I believe there's also some high bush blueberry in there. So it is well vegetated with with native shrub species already. It's just that Phragmites is growing throughout the entire area. It's a little more dense in some places, a little more sporadic in others, but it does grow throughout. So I thought the answer to staff's question was easiest to describe with a picture, so you could just see it for yourself. So, and with that, we have our protocols are on our plan. Annual monitoring reports are included, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Lincoln?
Just to clarify, Jen, you're doing the drip method to remove that, right? You're not using any spraying over there with all the natives embedded in there? Yeah.
Correct. Yep. So in areas where we might find some stalks that are growing a little more densely, what we'll probably do is bundle them together, cut them, and treat all of those together. Other areas where it's just sporadic stalks, they'll either be cut and dripped or they'll be like swiped with a glove up the stalk.
Okay. So, thank you. Yep. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Unless Alyssa has anything to add.
I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Maury?
No questions. Good project.
Pat?
No questions, no comments. Thank you.
Peter?
Questions?
Steve?
No questions.
Betsy?
No questions, but that was a nice picture. I think a picture tells 1,000 words.
It was easier.
Yeah.
Courtney?
No questions.
Excellent. All right, Jen. Sorry, Mrs. Lincoln. Is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Gladfelter, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing and take it under advisement. If there's no further comments or questions. All right, Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Terrace, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Jen.
Good night.
Night.
All right. Next up, Michael and Doralee Bingham, trustees, the Bingham Revocable Trust, 27 Crosby Lane, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to modify the structure of an existing dock.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requested continuance until March 9th.
To request of the applicant, I move to continue this to the 9th.
Carlo Hawks, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this till March 9th. Jen, is this it within the list you already said for March 9th?
Oh, yes, yes. All the ones I'm going to announce for March 9th, I've already included in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to continue until March 9th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Terrace, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 9th. Next up is 380 Edgewater that has previously been continued until March 9th. Next up are continued hearings under notice of intent. First up, Simon and Irina Stretzlov, 8 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove an existing dock and to construct a new dock, ramp, and float. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Wayne Tavares up to present his continued project.
Good evening.
Mr. Tavares,
How are
you're
you?
up, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. How are you tonight? I'm watching the Olympics as you speak. You got some important issues there in Falmouth.
Well, pay attention to the hearing.
We
okay?
continued. You were very kind to allow me to speak last time with the doc, and in the 2 weeks since, I've made corrections on the plan to go along with the DMF and presented them to the plan to the board. They've actually made the project better. So if I can I go to these plans, Jennifer, and share the screen?
Yes, you may.
Yes, ma'am.
Enough to find ones. That's not what I want. Sorry.
Wayne, you should have been prepping instead of watching the Olympics.
Yeah, well, I had it prepped, but I can't figure out how to get, I have about 5 of these up. So.
There's the agenda.
Can you see this?
Yes.
There's your doc.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I was prepped. I just got to figure out a way to get these, the correct ones up. What happened is I followed the topography or the grades of the old dock. And as Jen had pointed out, was I able to lift this dock up. And by coincidence, the same amount that the dock went down, 3.1 feet, we have elevated up to, let me see if I can, this I think I can do better. We have elevated this up so that we have the 6 feet plus of dock space clean from the bottom of the dock joists to the salt marsh underneath. Salt marsh extends from this dark line right along here, if you can follow my arrow. And coincidentally, instead of providing steps for public access, what I've done is now it's high enough, 6'5", in order to have passage under the dock. So that being said, we've met all the qualifications for a new dock. This is an interim dock, number 4487, by the way. And we come to the end here, which has changed. There was a need also for DMF to keep the float. We talked about a float versus a platform. Well, we've flipped over. We've gone to a platform so that it's stationary and it maintains the 2.5 foot difference on the shallow end or the landward end of this dock. So it answers a couple of questions in the NOI about storing the ramp upland and so forth. We're trying to permitize where it sits. We have talked to the harbor master. He's fine with this, leaving this as permanent. So we're putting stops on this dock. It still is a float to a point, but it's stopped at mean high water and it won't go any lower. There's a ladder on this end. We had to add 2 more piles to the other side for a 4-sided or 4-cornered platform. Each one has a stay. They're going to hold it at high tide. If there is a flood or anything, this will be able to float up, but not down. So we're maintaining the 2.5 feet. We're showing you the construction here. We had that in the old filing anyhow. Nothing has changed as far as construction is concerned. And maybe I can get over to this is the plan. Can you see this also?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So here's the dock right here where I'm pointing. Here's the adjacent dock of the neighbors. Here is the town ramp that comes in from Route 28 and the old Edwards Boatyard. And here's the docks across the way so that the channel is open. One of the reasons you don't want to make these fast, hard and fast, is for navigable waters. And you can see the 2 adjacent docks are further out in the middle of the Charles River than this. So that's why the harbor master has also allowed that. And I had to make some corrections on the plan as far as a 50-foot offset for, land under the ocean, which we added, and the fact that there is no top of coastal bank. This is a entirely sloping lot, so we put that note as well. And just to go over the notes, these are the notes. There was never a 104 square foot wall that was thrown out in the last meeting. We've revised the plans to the standards of DMF, as we just talked about. We've added the 2 piles. We've set the piles at 1.9 feet. We have the revisions here, and they're dated and stamped. And we also have the BBW data sheets. You asked those. We provided them both electronically. And Jen, did you receive them in the mail? You should have today.
I'll have to double check.
Okay, so I sent them. You have physical, you should have physical, and you should have electronic. We talked about the top of coastal bank, the no retaining wall. Yes, it's a fixed platform, so they won't have to store this anymore. So that's been taken care of. We maintain the 2.5 foot separation from land under the ocean. I'm just reiterating right now. So keep it as brief as possible. I hope you agree with all the related changes and the revisions. And I await Jennifer's comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. You can stop sharing. Thank you. Jen?
2 comments, Wayne. Where is the top of coastal bank? Why do you say it's off the plan?
Well, when surveyors do their topography and they stop at the edge of, they don't go any further than they have to go. All right. So when you did the research on the separation of the 2 foot contours, you have to get to that 20 foot separation. I have 14.7. I showed a lot of the separations in there. Under no situation was there ever under 20 feet. Up near the road, it got awful close to 20 feet, but it ran off the road. Then you run out of contours to compare with. So in theory, there is a top of coastal bank, but it's in the middle of the road. It's off the property, and it's not germane to this situation. So the research.
No, it's not germane, Wayne, but we do need the correct delineation on the plan. These delineations are set for 3 years once we approve a notice of intent. And I'm pretty sure your top of coastal bank might be over at your contour. Like, it runs up along the side of the house. I mean, that where the house is pretty flat, but then it slopes. So there is definitely a bank on that property.
Should I share again or no?
You can share again and try to explain this.
Okay, can you see that?
No.
No.
No? Share. 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 Share, no share. This. Share. Can you see that?
Wayne,
Yes.
No, you can see it. Okay. Thank you. These big files are just slow moving in my computer. I'm getting there. As you can see, oops. We have floodplain elevations at 12 and so forth. Then you start to see the elevations, and we're showing sufficient separation in these areas, and you don't see 20 feet anywhere. So you got 14.7, 15.81, 12.4, 16.4 as it makes its way to this corner. So that being said, there is no 20 feet separation. 20 divided by 2 is the 10-to-1 separation that demarks the top of a coastal bank. So it's very unclear here where the top of the coastal bank is, and we do not have further topography out here to compare it with, out in this area or the adjacent neighbor or anything, because that's what surveyors do. They stay on the property. So somewhere out in this corner, in the road, on this property adjacent is the top of the coastal bank, but not on this property according to this survey. And you can see this here, it doesn't exist in this area. It has to reach more than the flood zone, so it has to be above the flood zone area. In this area, it has to be here, except if it's not, it just keeps going upland until you reach it. You know that the rule is that you go to the floodplain level and then you keep going up until there's a break at 10-1. And there is no break at 10-1, not on this plan, not with the topography. So that's why we put this note right here. The top of the coastal bank does not manifest itself on the subject lot. So I hope that's clear enough.
Not convinced, but my only other point is Wayne, the float stop should raise that platform up like 3 feet above mean low for us. So, you know, we need that separation. So make sure your float stops are set at 3 instead of 2.5.
Oh, you add another, okay. Yeah.
Well, it's right in our regs, Wayne. So, but
Okay.
I appreciate you. I said, I really do. I appreciate the fixed platform as opposed to a float because it's a little, so that's a plus.
How do we adjust this then, Jennifer? New plan or a note or?
A note will be fine.
A note, okay.
Yeah.
On the plan or along with the narrative?
Nope, we'll put it, you can just put it on the plan and then we'll make it a condition.
Okay, great. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Both plans, plan view and the, obviously the cross section.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Anything else?
Not that I can think of unless I've missed something, and Alyssa, I'm sure will remind me if I missed something.
I think you covered everything. Thank you.
All right, Wayne, you can stop sharing.
Okay,
Please.
sorry. Yep.
No, it's fine.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it may have to come up again, but
Yeah.
easier this way. All right.
Jamie, do you want the quorum? Want the quorum, Jamie?
Please.
Did you say yes?
Yes.
It's you, Peter, Pat, me, and Courtney.
Okay. All right. Moving forward, commissioner comments. We'll start with Peter.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Pat.
No comments, thank you.
All right. Courtney.
No comments.
Betsy.
I have some comments. So, Maury brought this up last week well, first of all, the plans that I got are not the same as the plans that you just showed, because my plan in the revised block has nothing written down. And you said something about according to DMF requirements, but you have to be more specific, like you changed it from a floating dock to a platform. And there are other, so you have to put some specific things that were revised and it should be on the plan. So I'm not quite sure why the plan I got has an empty block.
I'm not sure either. That might have been a typo. I know I usually do this in AutoCAD, and I have a sense here that I did an oops, and then I made up for it by doing it in PDF Adobe. So when I sent it out for print. You may have a different, it's not a different version. You have the same plan without the block being in there. My bad. So I can correct this. It is the same plan. There's only two plans, the one you saw last time and this plan. And I possibly must have left out the block that says revision on the top corner, like this one says. Let me make sure.
Well, the block is there. I have a block, but it's empty. There's nothing in it. And yours has something in it. But I'm just saying it should be a little more explicit than that. So you're gonna have to submit a plan with the change in how far the float can go also.
Okay, so to explain the rise to the 7.5 level and the float being a platform, all the changes that we made, there's probably about 5 changes of substance, 5 of substance to the dock, 2 that were sort of academic plan changes. Okay, I apologize. I can.
Well, that's all right. Just as long as we have them when we're voting on it.
Sure. Okay. Very good.
Anything else?
Thanks for.
So are we ready for a motion?
No.
Okay.
Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Now, are you ready for a motion, Jamie?
You're in a hurry? Yes.
I'm always in a hurry, especially when it's past 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Terrace second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing and take it under advisement. If there's nothing further. All right, Betsy.
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Pat.
Terrace, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Tavares.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Wayne, I'll be in touch tomorrow to talk about your revisions, okay?
Very good. Okay, good. Thank you.
Good night, Wayne.
Good night.
Right.
Next up, William F. Solomini Jr., 0 Quaker Road, Lot 001A, 002, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a new single-family dwelling and install a new Title V septic system with all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Sorry. Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 9th.
March 9th sounds like it's full. Did you make a motion, Courtney?
Yeah, I moved. So moved.
Carla Hawk, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until March 9th. Let's see.
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carla Hawk's, aye.
Pat.
Terrace, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
And aye.
It is excuse me. It is unanimous. We have continued this till March 9th. Next up, Kevin and Sandra Delbridge, 24 Saltworks Way Nominee Trust, 174 Secondusset Road in the abutting right-of-way, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct invasive species removal, install native plantings, and to relocate an osprey pole. And Betsy, could I have the quorum, please?
Courtney, Kevin, Maury, Betsy, Jamie, Peter, Pat.
Not Steve. Kind of
Not
simple.
Steve. I know, but I have to go through them before I realize who's missing.
Yeah. All right. Steve, take a coffee break. All right. I see Nate and Maria Hickey. Nate, you're up, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. Members of the commission, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Nate Goshgarian with Holmes and McGrath, presenting on behalf of the client. This is a continued hearing from last week. Permission to share my screen, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, can we see the aerial?
Yes.
Great. So this is the subject property. This is a residentially developed parcel of land. Last time we spoke, we were talking about invasive species removal and restoration, specifically in this area. This property includes this area right here, which belongs to this property, and then a 25-foot wide or 160 square foot swath of land, which belongs to the local association. So last time the conversation we had to do with density and species selection. We had talked about introducing a diversification of kind of species closer to the salt marsh, which is our main resource here, that are more salt tolerant. Maria Hickey, who worked on that plan, is here to present that side of the project. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask if we can promote Maria Hickey.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Maria Hickey and Associates Landscapes. We had continued the hearing last week so that we could expand and revise our planting plan to include some more salt tolerant woody shrubs. So if you start down at the bottom right here, excuse me for the moving mouse, we'll have at least 2 rows of Baccharis. And actually, I will keep going on the Baccharis until I've hit non-hydric soils. At that point, we'll switch over to winterberry. And from the winterberry shrubs, we'll do a few rows of those. We'll transition into the bayberry and then into the clethra. The top portion of the resource area, it's very important to create a thicket for both food and shelter, but even more importantly, to keep anyone from the public from trying to go down into this area. We will be relocating an osprey pole and platform from across the street down to the right here, right where the lowest band of the winterberry is. And we really do not want any disturbance from the public, people going in trying to take pictures, et cetera, et cetera. There's no reason whatsoever for people to be walking down to the marsh. And so we want to make sure that we have created a dense, thorny thicket to prevent that from happening. So that is the reason for why we have the Rosa virginiana high up on the bank. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the critical time frame and window that we have to move and relocate that osprey pole. Literally every day is incredibly important. The osprey for the past few years have returned the 3rd week in March. And we want to be able to move the pole and reset the pole on the platform so that when the osprey return, they can start building their nest at the appropriate location. What we don't want to have happen is they start across the street and they lay eggs, and now we can't move the pole and the platform. So I had talked to Alyssa today a little bit about it, talked to Mark about it as well, just because we're really concerned about having our order of conditions and being able to start on this project before the 3rd week of March. So we would respectfully ask for the support of the board to do that. The direct abutters are already in favor of this project and sharing the cost of it. So I don't anticipate during our 10-day waiting period that we'll have any problems whatsoever. But again, I just wanted to reiterate, the plan that we have presented to you offers a diversity of native woody shrubs to provide shelter, food, and a much higher habitat value than what we currently have right now. And we look forward, this is a voluntary project, but we look forward to creating a better habitat than what currently exists. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen?
Maria, the board doesn't meet next week, so they're not going to be able
March
to vote in
2nd.
order until March 2nd.
Correct.
So, when you need the pole, I mean, you don't have to have the whole restoration project
Okay.
permitted. I mean, you could cut a path and move the pole, correct?
Well, we have to, at that lowest level where the Baccharis is and the Winterberry, we have to at least clear the invasive species down there. So
Not
that-
all of it though, not to
No,
move the pole.
Get down a path, clear that. We just want to get it in and get it set.
When you say clear that, what do you mean?
So on the screen, if you can see this area
You're
abutting,
not sharing.
they can't see it? Okay, sorry.
No, you can share it so we can see.
Okay. So down, this is where the proposed pole, right where I have the hand of the mouse, okay? So we need the access to get down here and at least clear, I'm gonna say like a 15 square foot area to get the pole in. Maybe even less. We just need to be able to clear, hand auger and get the pole in and set.
Okay.
And I just don't want to get in trouble for doing something without a permit in hand. So that's why
okay.
when
We'll try to have the permit for you. They'll vote it on March 2nd. We'll try to have that to you that week.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
So
So
you
much.
can have it. You can stop sharing. The only thing I have concerns with, Maria, is we looked at this plan the other day.
Yeah.
You had the rows against the road. You had the blueberry behind it. I said that you could incorporate a little bit more rows, and then it looks like we went wholesale to 200 rose bushes in there. So
It's just 6 rows of roses, and I can tweak it. I just want to make sure, Jen, that nobody walks down there.
I understand that, but again, my concern is from the last time, it almost looks like the original plan you sent with all the rows. And, my statement from the last period, the last hearing stands is there's too much rose going in. Our coastline is becoming a rose garden. I understand the thought of putting in, something that people don't want to walk through. Hey, try poison ivy. Nobody's going to walk through it. And it offers a wonderful wildlife habitat source. So I think, maybe a little less rose, maybe some more clether or more blueberry. I know I, said you could incorporate a little bit more when we met on Zoom, but it almost looks like you just flipped it. So we'll see what the board has to say, and I'll get you your permit by that first week in March.
And again, it's easy enough out in the field to make those adjustments.
Yeah,
There's
it
no
is.
problem with that.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
not a problem.
Alyssa?
No further comments. Thank you.
All right. Maury?
I'm sorry. I agree with Jen, so I'm not going to add any more. Just they'll deal with that in the field. Thank you.
All right.
No comments, thank you.
Peter?
No comment. Thank you.
Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Courtney?
Heard no comments.
Betsy?
I also agree with Jen. I don't want to see our entire coast have rows. But that can be done in the field and can be done by conditioning.
Okay. Dan, is there anything in the public chat function?
Nothing in the public chat function, Mr. Chairman.
I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Gladfelter, second.
I like it. Competition. All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's nothing else. All right. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Heard, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have closed the hearing. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night, guys.
Next up, request request for a hearing for a certificate of compliance. John Samorian, 21 Bay Road, Falmouth, Mass. Request for a certificate of compliance for Mass DEP number 25-2254. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is going to be continued, or they're requesting a continuance till March 2nd. They gave us the wrong DEP file number to advertise for compliance, so we do need to advertise another DEP number. The issues are still the same. It's just we were given the wrong DEP number.
All right.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until March 2nd. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat?
Terrace, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 2nd. Next up, continued hearings under an enforcement order. William T. Dowling Jr., trustee, Venus Realty Trust, 6 Scallop Cove, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted removal of vegetation within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you remember this one, this is the one where all the trees were topped and removed and the shrub layer was removed. We are working with Holmes and McGrath and Maria Hickey and Associates to come up with a plan. We actually have a Zoom call tomorrow morning at 9 to review, I think, a finalized plan. We just want the ability to see the replacement trees staked out in the field. So we are going to meet with them, determine when we can all meet, to review the project in the field, because they are proposing a number of replacement trees, and we just want to see those laid out on the landscape before we approve that. And so I would recommend continuing this hearing until March 9th.
So moved.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until March 9th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
Brian, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat?
Terrace, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 9th. Next up, vote order of conditions. First up, George Botello Jr., George L. Botello, year 2019, Revocable Living Trust, 22 Flax Pond Road, Falmouth, Mass. This is a dock project, I'm sorry.
The dock project, they did submit the revised plan, reducing the float size. There was concern about some other elements on the property, but we did get an opinion from Frank Duffy that that we should just keep those separate. So because it has to do with encroachment onto land under the care and control of the Conservation Commission, so we'll need to address that separately. So right now we are focusing just on the dock, and I do believe the dock meets all the regulations with the reduced flow.
Thank you. Betsy, I have the quorum is not Steve, correct?
That's correct.
And, okay. Anybody have anything?
Just the material of the pilings, that was all.
Yep, it'll be no chemically treated wood whatsoever. It's the freshwater dock regulations.
I'll make a motion to accept as discussed.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat?
Terrace, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Steve, I don't know if you're on any of the next ones. I don't know. I don't want you to leave, but. All right, next up, Seacoast Shores Association, Inc., 0 Edgewater Drive East, map 41, parcel 030000K, 001A, East Falmouth, Mass. And again, I have the quorum as not Steve.
And not Courtney.
And not Courtney. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, this is the beach nourishment at the Seacoast Shore Feed. One of the questions that the staff had asked is, you know, where does the sand go? Unfortunately, at this point, nobody can really answer that particular question, where the sand has ended up from the last 2 nourishment projects. They have been monitoring the area since 2018 to try to get a handle on what's going on out there. They do want to put 360 cubic yards, of sand on that beach area. And they have proposed to do additional monitoring across to Washburn Island, on either side of that little spit that comes out from the tip of from that little part of Washburn Island, to try to get a better idea of where the sand is going and how fast it's moving. That is the proposed project. The question, you know, still remains of where is the sand going to go? And until we monitor it, we're not going to know. So I think the statement made at the last hearing is we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I would specifically make the condition, because it's not what they gave us, that the transect across the bay has to go all the way from land to land, just north of that spit.
Land to land on the north side of the spit.
Yeah. So it's their northern transect.
Yeah.
And they show that it's north of that spit, but they don't show it shoreline to shoreline. And that's what.
Yeah, shoreline to shoreline. So they'll have to revise that for us.
Yep.
And it's going to be that 360. So it's 360 cubic yards total. Do you want to give them the ability to do it all at once, or do you want them to be able to do it over the life of the permit? We can give them that option, but if they do it over the life of the permit, then we will need to have them submit cubic yard calculations to us each time they nourish.
With 360 being the max, correct?
360 being the total, yeah, the max.
Yeah. And this
It
would be
doesn't
for
matter to me, really.
Is somebody present when they bring it?
If you would like somebody to be present, Maureen, we will be present.
Yeah, it would just, I mean, otherwise you'd never know.
Right.
All right, we'll have a staff member on site.
That's what, 20 truckloads?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or more or less.
Yeah. And then we also asked for it to be NAVD. And the cubic yard, the PLS stamp. That's all I had for on my notes.
Yeah, we'll get a revised plan from them.
They have to get permission from the town for access, correct?
Yes, they do.
All right. Anything else? All right.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. There's nothing else. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat,
Terrace, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Andrew Goldman, trustee, Andrew Goldman Trust Agreement of 2001, 60 Pheasant Lane, East Falmouth, Mass.
No,
And again,
Courtney,
the
no.
quorum is not-
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No Courtney, no Steve.
I like that simplicity.
I tried to get ahead of it.
Yeah. All right.
I'm grabbing it. Hang on. That's the dock project. Revised float and ramp size, revised profiles. So they reduced the size of the float to 100 square feet, 5.5 by 16, and yeah. Construction of a dock.
This is the dock in Wing Pond.
No.
Yeah.
Green Pond.
Green Pond.
Green Pond.
Pheasant Lane.
This is the one we were gonna put the board across so they can't walk across the salt marsh for the public access.
Oh, okay. Okay, right.
What was that, Beth? Maury, what do you want me to
There's
do?
just a horizontal board across the bottom of the stringers.
Salt
so they
marsh
can't-
is.
Yeah, the salt marshes. So the public access is actually,
Over the dock.
yeah, it's upland.
No, it's further inland from
Yeah.
the salt marsh.
He has it on the plan,
Okay.
but just the board across it so they
Got
can't.
it,
walk
got it,
across.
got it, yeah.
Is there something to do with a 14-foot vegetative buffer that was not put in pursuant to an old order? And you were going to include that as a requirement in this order? 1985.
Melissa, do you remember that?
I think they confirmed it was actually in place.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
an old order. It was confirmed it was in place.
It is there, okay.
Already ongoing with the deed. So I think we're all set on that.
All right.
Okay, I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing further. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat,
Terrace, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Robert Leblanc, 375 Seacoast Shores Boulevard and 29 Linwood Terrace, East Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was for a couple of additions and some mitigation planting. I think the sticking points were the placement of, I think it was some trees that the board wanted in the mitigation area, as well as wrapping some mitigation around existing vegetation on the site that Alyssa had noted. And I think you said that we'll work it out with the applicant's representative in the field on the tree placement, because the trees are going to be placed in the mitigation area, as well as I think Betsy and Courtney really wanted those BVW data sheets. So we will make that a condition of the permit.
All right. Before we go any further, Betsy, the quorum, please.
Everybody but Steve.
Thank you. All right.
Anything to add, Alyssa?
I think those are the major points. It was mostly the mitigation.
What was that?
I said, I think those are the major points you hit. I remember we were going to work with the field for the trees.
Yep.
I think that's it.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Gladfelter.
Hawk, second.
Sorry. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing further. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Terrace, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Francis and Claire Norton, 87 Childs River Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is an amendment to that. I think this is the house that burnt down on 87 Charles River Road. They want to remove a portion of the pavement that went from the water's edge to the house so that they can eliminate the small amount of mitigation they were required to plant. And I think Betsy made the statement that she wanted an additional tree on the lot, and I think they were agreeable to that.
That's the note I have, yeah. And again, I have the quorum is not Steve.
Correct.
Thank you.
Poor Steve.
I know it sounds negative saying it that way, but it's easier to say one person's not in it than
Not Steve, not Steve.
7 out of, right.
I'm okay with it, Mr. Chairman.
I called it. See?
Where is he?
What a team player. All right. Anybody have anything specific they want in this, other than that tree, the additional tree?
Nope, I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Hawk, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing further. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Terrace, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, AC Cape Cod LLC, 836 Palmer Avenue, Falmouth, Mass.
Auto camp.
And again, this is, quorum is not Steve, correct?
Correct.
Steve, we got one more for you, don't worry.
I'm going to leave you. I can pass on the final item.
Night, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Night, Steve.
Auto camp in their wall to stop their erosion. And I think that the main concern is that the access. Like, why do they need to take all the trees down?
Yeah, so before they do it, you should have them.
What, Bets?
You should have a meeting with them to determine which ones can be saved. So, but I have a question on this. I was thinking the other situation that was similar to this was the nursing home up in North Falmouth. Remember when there was a wall that was put in?
Yes.
There? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And wasn't that wall tied in? Didn't they bore in like rods vertically in?
They put tiebacks in.
Tiebacks in it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I mean, it was a different kind of wall, but after we closed this hearing and stuff, I started thinking that seems like a better solution. I mean, I'm with you, Maury. I can see all this kind of tumbling down.
And I don't understand why, I mean, when we went there, it sounded more like they're worried about disturbing the irrigation system instead of going around the top and working from the top and maybe even driving sheathing or something instead of literally denuding the entire bank and putting in riprap in the drainage. I'm still not sure that the calculations for that roof are adequate for the one new, dry well, so to speak. But I mean, it was some kind of, engineered catch basin. But again, that's on the top of the hill that's just going to fill up with water. If the soil becomes hydric, it's going to blow that wall out because it's just a riprap wall.
And it's very, very steep.
Very steep and very close to the building and a lot of runoff there. I don't know. I feel that it could be a better plan, better design. And I don't know what they're gonna plant back for the trees. I mean, it's all stone now.
I have a fundamental question. If they, in theory, of solving the problem with the runoff, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the roof, then what's the necessity of the retaining wall?
Right now, it's a big blowout. Already big there's a huge eroded area already.
I understand that. So if they solve the problem of the runoff, they need to only, in quotes, repair that area?
Well, if they came from the top, I mean, they could just, like seawalls are built a lot of times from the top, and they could go to the top and, with an excavator and place the rocks just in that blowout instead of they're basically removing what's left of the bank.
So tell them they have to go in from the top and put the rocks in from the top.
Yeah. Because they can put mats down. Yeah, you can put, mats down so you don't disturb anything. All right, well, I think let's make a finding that they do all work from the top and that no more than the disturbed area gets repaired.
So they are fixing, so you want to make a finding about the roof runoff being addressed.
Correct. Obviously, they did not design it to the proper calculations of the volume that was coming off of that before, and now they're going to, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, they
and then
probably
they have to
designed
do
it.
all repair work from the top. And then just enough to fill that void. Do they really need to make that huge rock revetment?
No, I think Jamie hit the nail on the head. It's a fundamental, if they fix the problem with the runoff, then the rest of the slope should be fine, especially with the trees that are there holding it.
Yeah, there we go.
But I think they should be allowed to, there are a couple of trees that are kind of
compromised.
Definitely compromised from the storm, and they wanted to remove those, but they should be able to do that without much disturbance.
Okay.
Again, they can do that with a crane from the top.
Yeah.
And those particular trees could be reviewed with staff, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. In that pre-construction meeting. Right, Courtney?
Yeah, so is this proposed wall that they're talking about, as an engineer signed off on it? Because that's so steep there that what I fear with that wall is once it's set in, it's just gonna slide down over time, it's just gonna slump down the slope if it's not properly engineered.
Hang on, Courtney, I can bring up the plan in like 2 seconds.
But I agree with everybody else. It should be done at the top. And I like the idea of putting tiebacks in there, all kinds of stuff, because whatever you do, you got to stabilize it.
Yeah. Well, a tieback wouldn't go with a riprap.
Right.
It would go more with what Maury just suggested, is put a
sheet pile.
Yeah.
I would not be opposed to sheet pile, and if they wanted to put rock in front of it instead of hide it, that's fine. But again, it can be all done from above. And if they have to redo their irrigation system, so be it.
So I have a question for those of you who've been on the Cape for a long time. Is that an area that is fill? Why is there such a steep slope there?
Melissa, do you know if we got the plans on this electronically? Because I don't see them in here.
I didn't get them.
Okay, so I can't bring it up, guys. We'll have to contact them for the electronic plans because they haven't provided them to us.
Yeah.
I think
Betsy, it was really steep before AutoCamp bought it. I don't know whether it was essentially fill, it was pushed over there by the previous owners or not, but it was awfully steep.
Yeah, it was pretty much cut and filled probably over the years.
Yeah, don't you think? I mean, that doesn't look like a normal landform.
So, which also gives me pause as to, you know, if you build, what kind of foundation is going to be under this thing? I mean, that goes back to my concern that it's just going to slip down the slope.
California.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We were out there on a site visit with Bracken Engineering, and I can't remember who else. And stormwater was a big issue of mine coming off that slope and down that gravel path around that slope. We told them way back when there was going to be a massive stormwater issue on that site.
I remember during the hearing suggesting that the roads that they have down there, they should pave them simply because of runoff.
The runoff.
Yeah. It sort of peripherally was having a conversation with somebody just recently, and you know, they've had problems with a septic failing, and they put that down in the hollow, and apparently there's no way you can get a truck down there to pump it. So where does all that effluent go?
Well, this is the wall. So right now I have findings that they are addressing the roof runoff. You want all the repairs from the top, and that you don't want that massive wall. You just want enough to fix that blowout. Allow them to just patch that blowout area. You want to take out the compromised trees, but again, you want to do that from the top, and we'll confirm all this with a pre-construction meeting.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm not going to design the wall until then they have to put tiebacks and everything because I can't bring up that.
No,
Okay.
but if you talk to them, you could say that we would entertain.
Well, they can come back for an
proposal
amendment
like
as
that.
well.
Right.
All right, I'll talk to Zach.
What about vegetating that swale?
Yeah. You mean after they repair, or do you mean just backfilling it and vegetating that big blowout?
Well, the wall and backfilling it. And, I mean, it's just going to leave it stone, or?
That was their proposal, was to leave it stone.
Yeah,
Do we have any drawings of their re-engineered drainage roof runoff system?
Not that I can bring up, Courtney.
Yes, but we did get it, Courtney. It was part of their plans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, what are you thinking?
I'll
Do we
make
have
a
enough in
motion
there?
to issue an order of conditions with the conditions, as discussed, and with the conditions that Jen has written down.
Carla Hawk, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. If there's anything else. All right, Betsy?
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawk, aye.
Pat?
Terrace, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. Before the last motion, reminder, we have no meeting next week.
Move to adjourn.
Carla Hawk, second.
Gladfelder, aye.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Come on, Kevin, get with the program.
Oh, O'Brien, I. Sorry.
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Our side.
Paul's right.
You don't let me down.
Steve, are you still there?
Nope.
Nope.
I thought Steve left.
Well,
All
he still
We're
has a
adjourned.
block.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night,
Hi,
everybody.
guys.
Good night,
Night,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.